I swear the 30 seconds goes by so quickly. What is up, y'all? It is 8:08 or 6 or 7 or 9, depending on what time your clock is set to, but it is 8:05. That means it's time to go live. Welcome to Free Thinkers. We got another episode of some really good conversation taking place tonight. I know we kind of don't like the word episode, but I don't really know what else you call these, recorded conversations. But we got a great conversation going tonight, and hopefully have some cool guests joining us. Some thought provoking guests, I guess you could say. So hopefully you will stick around for the conversation and maybe even join us on the live. Give you a quick little rundown of what to do. The instructions are the same every week. You have to join our Facebook Free Thinkers group page if you want to stay in the loop with all of what is happening and network with us, but certainly if you want all the information weekly on posts and how to join. So pinned at the top of the Facebook group page is a pinned post that has all the information for tonight's conversation. And there's a StreamYard link. That link changes every single Tuesday. So again, that link will never be the same. You click on the link and it'll bring you directly into the conversation live. So do be prepared. Have some earbuds to cancel out any background noise if you have some. Turn everything down. If you're on double devices, make sure that you have them down so that you can record and hear just you without echo. If you don't have earbuds, that's okay. Obviously, I don't have any on right now either, but I'm in a silent room, so nothing's coming through here. So that would be the preference. It will bring you directly into the conversation, and then boom, you'll be on live. If you're not interested in joining the conversation live for one reason or another, I won't harass you tonight while you're not here. You can join us in the live chat. If you comment in the chat box on our Facebook feeds, whether it's through Free Thinkers or through mine or through Q's, then y'all can conversate with whoever is in that feed with you. If you converse over on the YouTube channel, then you can only engage with who is over there. So you may get different conversations depending on where you're watching us from, but you can definitely interact with each other in the Facebook section, the Facebook Live section. And we do try to engage with y'all there too. We do try to bring the conversations on the screen so we can see who said what, and also go back and forth that way as well. So we do try to interact with people in the chat as well. Sometimes we don't. If the conversation's moving quickly and there's a lot of moving parts, we may not be able to. But nonetheless, please continue to join us however you can. Appreciate your support, the shares, the likes, the loves, the reposts, the new members. Absolutely 100% appreciate your support, and certainly need it. So it is appreciated. It is appreciated. It is needed. So please make sure you hit the share button if you hear me saying this, and join, have people join us, tell people who are, free thinkers about us as well. So let's keep these adult, thought-provoking, stimulating conversations going. Adult content always, so just warning, of course, to whatever ears you have around you. But these are adult conversations, so oftentimes there is adult language used. Totally up to you who you want to let hear these conversations. But they are unscripted, they are off the dome, they are passionate, they are opinionated, they are, hot topics for some people. But it's good stuff. So we appreciate you watching and joining, and you can join in at any time. You can leave any time as well if you need to tap out a little early. We do go through 9:30. That is our goal tonight, is to do a hard stop at 9:30. So every Tuesday it's 8:05 to 9:30. Sometimes we go till 10. Tonight we're going till 9:30. So
why are you talking about the hard stuff?
Because we're totally dedicating 30 minutes to each, and I told everybody that I invited, that is gonna be the vibe for tonight. We're not gonna drag it out. We're gonna get to the point. We're gonna do our 30 minutes per three. So
uncharacteristic of you, but I'm with it.
Well, it's like we talked about earlier. Some conversations we could go forever and ever and ever, and some conversations may not have a lot of content to them, but you and I went for 2 hours last week. We could do that every day. That's not everybody's cup of tea, right? So in the aspect of trying to make sure that, one, we hit all of our conversation points we wanted to talk about tonight, and two, just make it be one of those things for folks who don't want to get into an hour-long conversation about one thing, that they don't have to. We'll be able to switch topics a couple different times and go totally different directions with each time we switch. So 30 minutes, 3 topics. We gonna make it work. Thank y'all for joining us. Michael, thanks for joining us. Yahukanan, thanks for joining us. Totally look forward to hearing y'all's perspectives on these topics we're gonna cover tonight. I think we have a few more people coming in tonight, but that's all right. We can get started whenever we are ready.
Let's go. Which one you wanna talk about first?
You want to do the death penalty first?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with that.
Okay. So there was a post on the Freethinkers group page that I saw last week online that the state of Florida has passed I don't know if it's a bill or a law. I probably should have been a little more detailed on that, but has passed something that they want to be able to.
They passed it. It's a law.
Well, but it could be, bill means that we still got to talk about it, right? Like it's still up for vote somewhere down the line. So I don't know if it's been made law yet. I can easily look on the interwebs. But Florida says basically if you are convicted of pedophilic sex crimes, you can be sentenced to the death penalty. And I thought that'd be a slam dunk, like agreed sentiment. And when you said no, I was like, oh, we got to talk about this because again, I thought it'd be slam dunk. So why do you feel like it's not so cut and dry if they sentenced all pedophiles to death?
Well, let me go back in a simpler term. This criminal system. Can you hear me? I'm fluctuating.
It's a little bit choppy.
Am I chopping up?
You're good now.
Let me try to come out some of this stuff. How about now? Can you hear me all right? I'm trying to come out
definitely.
I can think of.
Definitely.
Okay. So to back up just a little bit, I don't think this justice system is in any position to make such definitive judgments against anyone because our system is too crooked. Our system is too it's too much gray area in it. Our system can easily be manipulated. Our system is heavily flawed. And why would you put that type of power into a flawed system? Very dangerous. I think it's a terrible idea.
You think it's a terrible idea? Do you think if the parameters around convicting somebody were made more definitive, that you would be okay with the death penalty for somebody who absolutely, no questions asked, sexually assaulted a child?
I think there's well, let me say this. I think there's a decent argument for capital punishment. Whether I agree with it or not, I'm not sure, but I think there's a decent argument when it comes to something like murder. Murder is more definitive. Murder is less hearsay. If you've ever, in any type of crime or robbery, or the eyewitnesses, it's proven, are extremely unreliable. Also, children, it's easy for children to be coerced into believing or saying or agreeing with something that someone tells them to do. We already know we got raggedy people in this society, and if you people will easily try to weaponize that in the same like manner that a lot of women will weaponize rape, which messes it up for those who really are being abused. And because now it's always this gray area because people can. I was just reading this today because I get on Wikipedia, so you know, like Rosewood and Tulsa, it's always some white woman claiming that some black man did. I was looking, I'm from Illinois, and I was looking in this small little city called Pinckneyville, where one of the correctional facilities are. And I looked up their history. It was the same freaking thing. Some white woman claimed that a black man did this, and then they immediately It validated their sundown laws. They shipped all of the black people out to East St. Louis and then took their property. And it's like, it's the same thing over and over. And this is the type of system that you would trust to make these judgments. I would, and just in general, I just recap when it comes to something like pedophilia, which is a terrible, see, they use these things when it's something so terrible. Oh, why wouldn't
People
we
will
want
agree.
everybody are so quick to agree, not really thinking about the type of power that you're putting into evil hands. It's just a dangerous thing. I'll let somebody else jump in.
Fellas, what do y'all think? Is it a slam dunk case for y'all, or is Q's perspective made you think a little bit differently, possibly?
I would say, and some people may disagree or may feel some kind of way when I say this, but in regards to, the Florida passing the law of pedophile being basically the death sentence, I will have to say no, and I'll tell you why. The reason why I say no, I think there should be an alternative because, these people that have committed these egregious crimes have put these children through a permanent psychological, prison or damage in a sense. So I think the alternative, instead of the death penalty, because it's easy, it's too easy, it's quick. I think the punishment should be much more severe, like torture, an alternative like torture, a permanent torture or some form of torture. So,
literal hell.
So hold on.
You got it. Go ahead. You got it.
So,
Let me get my notebook.
I thought somebody was cutting in.
Nuh-uh.
I gotta cut it on.
I think somebody getting some background, some feedback.
Go ahead. I'm gonna mute everybody except for you. Go ahead.
Okay. Torture so they can understand or not, similar psychological damage that they've done, but they at least can feel the pain of the individual that they've caused going through when they're going through this type of torture and be reminded of the crime that they did. And I think the torturing of the soul is more permanent than the torturing or the just the quick death of the body. So I think that and besides the the murdering aspect that Florida has passed, I would say no, but there should, but not to say they get off scot-free, but the alternative should be some type of permanent torture so they can have it in their thought process, their mind, that what they did was egregious, was heinous, and they have to pay for it, and they have to relive it over and over and over again till they last dying breath.
That was a Black Mirror episode that we could talk about another time. I don't think you even saw that one, Nikki, but go ahead. Michael, go ahead, sir.
I kind of feel what he's saying on the torture aspect, but here's the thing. If a person's been found guilty of child molestation, what good is torturing them? What lesson are you trying to teach them? Get rid of them. They serve no purpose. If a thorough investigation has been done, they've been found guilty, get rid of them. Sorry, that cut and dry. Torture for what? Torture is, and then on top of that, who's going to pay for the torture? My tax dollars are not going to pay to keep somebody alive that serves no purpose. A pedophile serves no purpose in society. Point blank, period.
Yep.
So,
Taxpayers going to end up having to pay for the torture. But to your point, Six, and you got to think about the mentality, and we're talking about deep-seated illness in the brain of somebody who is a pedophile, really and truly. There isn't a rehabilitation. You can talk to most pedophiles, and there's nothing you can do to take that away. That's not gonna. It's like sharks on blood. Once you taste it, it's always going to be there. And you can castrate them, and you can lock them in closets, but those desires and urges don't go away. So torture would be wonderful, but there's a part of them that would probably accept and somewhere enjoy the aspect of being tortured for something that they did that they inherently did know was wrong. But for whatever reason, they didn't or couldn't or wouldn't control that. Do you feel, I feel like the reason why for me this was almost such a slam dunk decision of supporting it And again, only in situations where it was 100% irrefutable that this person absolutely did this. Instant death would be a fucking deterrent, in my opinion. You think that going over to that school and touching that little girl, or that teacher that touches that little boy gets death before the end of the first year of that arrest? That's gonna curb some shit. That's gonna curb some shit. If you start watching people die because of this stuff, they're gonna lock their own ass in the closet and tie their hands to themselves and tape their eyeballs shut. Because death as an option. Most of these pedophiles aren't afraid because they know people don't believe children, because they know children won't tell, because they know children are bad witnesses, because they know no one's going to believe them, because they have a position of power or notoriety or of importance. If people started being killed or touching children,
well,
I feel like there'd be less people killing, touching children.
Does the death penalty deter people from killing one another? Does life imprisonment deter people from selling drugs? I mean,
but a lot of those crimes are committed in acts of something else, whereas sexually assaulting a child is a premeditated choice that a person makes. Robbing somebody and killing somebody in the commission of a robbery, yeah, it's fucked up and it's really, really bad, but the intention may not have been to kill somebody. The intention for a pedophile is to touch and hurt and harm and possibly kill a child. There's not a whole lot of gray areas in that decision making.
I still don't agree with the the possibility of catching a fatal STD, does it prevent you from having sex?
It's not going to happen to me. It's like a DWI.
Can I get a quick response?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then Jules jump in after that.
Okay, y'all do realize that torture eventually leads to death when the person withstand, huh? Yeah. Well, I'll say this.
You're taking too long.
There, huh?
He said,
hold on, partner.
Hold on, partner. That's taking too long.
Oh yeah. Oh, the other is telling me to hold on. But I'm saying is that y'all want to. I know y'all agree that it should be death and it's quick or whatnot. But on the opposite side, that person should suffer before they die, because at least on their way out they understand that what they did was egregious and heinous. So the severity of the torture should eventually lead to their death, not just a quick one. Like they need to suffer and understand what they did was wrong. So
we should stone them. We should stone them.
Or that's yeah.
Or how about it's left up to the family? How about the family's given the option? The family's given the option either execute or torture, but it's left to the family.
Right.
After court. After being
of
found
course.
guilty in court, the family gets the option. But
of course, yeah. Well, I'll give you guys an example. So back in the day, they used to do heinous tortures for people that basically committed crimes. And one of those tortures was they built this Brahma bull and they put the person in that bull and they cooked the person slowly to death. So imagine taking the pedophile that's guilty of the crime and slowly cooking them to death. Point is, when you torture somebody, depending on severity of the torture and the crime, also in this case, pedophilia, eventually it's going to lead to death, but the suffering part of it is what's going to make it severe when they're on their way out the door.
Right.
Now, as much as all of this throws me off, listen to y'all say that, I do, just from the standpoint, I do agree with the way a person is killed may deter some people from doing certain actions. So yeah, just getting, okay, so yeah, I might go to jail and you might strap me down and inject me with a few needles. The first one gonna put me to sleep and the next one going, that may not be the same as roasting me alive. Some people that could be a deterrent in how people choose to anyway. That was just an example.
That was just an example for back in the day, fam, but I'm pretty sure there is more. They didn't turn up the heat on the tortures.
Let me before we get to the end of our time, Jules, jump in. Tell us what you think, Jules.
So in theory, I love the idea of torturing the mofos to death. I having a child that was very close to me, having gone through it, having stood there with them to go through the trial, having gone to the parole hearings to make sure that that motherfucker didn't get out. I have very strong feelings about it and would love the idea of torture. The idea of the death penalty, in theory, sounds fantastic. I definitely agree, Q, about the idea of we are in a flawed system. And so wrongful convictions, false allegations, all of those things are definitely a big consideration. But my bigger concern to me is that pedophiles are mentally ill. They are sick, twisted individuals. And if we now tell them that instead of just getting a slap on the wrist in jail and whatever punishment for doing that to that child, you're going to die. My biggest concern is how many of them would then, well, it's the same penalty if I killed a little fucker. So I might as well do what I want and kill them because I'm going to get put to death regardless. So I'll just go ahead and kill him. Then there's even less chance I'll get found out. So my concern is what it would perpetuate and how it may escalate the crimes being committed against children if this was the known outcome and result. Because right now they're going to get some jail time. They're going to have to register. And, you know, dude had to register for 10 years. He spent 5 years in jail. He looked like a completely different person the last parole hearing that we went to. And the officers all told us how we shouldn't worry and we don't have anything to be scared of. I said, I ain't scared of him. He better be scared of me. I'm not scared of him. He did that to a child that I love. Mm-hmm. At the end of it, he was a shell of the person that he was when he went into jail. And my concern is that if he'd known that he was going to get put to death, what would have happened to that baby then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the time where I usually start opening up more questions and really digging into this. But we're at 8:30, so we're gonna go to the next topic.
Oh, damn you!
I told you.
I think you should give it a few more minutes because we started at 8:12 to 8:15.
It's not
so 15 more minute grace period should be given.
Okay,
for the topic.
Let me go here. I've heard everybody's thoughts, and my question is. No
Just
one fears. I got you. I give it a couple more minutes. No one fears the slippery slope that it could start up. Meaning, okay, so now once we start going down that line, so anybody get caught stealing, are we going back to the Middle East where they're gonna chop your hand off? Are we cool with that?
No, I mean, and no, we don't want to roll back, and I hope that that doesn't. And it's a bill right now, but I hope that it doesn't open up the door for all of the things that you prefaced your issue with this to become something that we would see an uprise in.
Always something else. Every time anytime any bill or law is passed is always for a greater. They're massaging us into something. A bigger agenda.
So they need to just let the parents of the children have, vigilante justice and look the other fucking direction whenever they come up missing or in pieces.
Let me ask this: a large portion of people who abused were also abused themselves. Is that going to be taken into consideration, or it's like, you are adult now, you didn't get that stuff dealt with, too bad. Let's put you in the bull that Huguenin was talking about. Like, how do we draw that moral line once we start doing that? Do we have?
That was definitely the case in the situation I'm talking about. And the other thing is that the child was 9 and was given the choice by our family, was given the choice by my group. You have 2 choices, and we're good with either one you want to make. We can take care of this, or we can call the police. And looking back, I'm not the one that I don't have children. It wasn't my child. It wasn't my decision, but that was a huge burden to place on a child.
Now,
the circumstances Jules, being what they were.
Let me go here, Jules. Let me go here. So terrible, unfortunate situation that happened to, you know, a child that you knew very well. 12, 13, 14 years later, the same child ends up doing this to someone else. Are you still okay with putting them in the bull and slow roasting them until they die, knowing that this may not have been the case had they not been exposed to this terrible thing?
Man, you're gonna run with that example, ain't you?
Oh no, it's not. I'm not even talking about far-fetched stuff. This is the probability in most cases. A lot of people who abuse were also abused as children. So
no, I'm talking about the bull you keep referencing.
Oh yeah, because we're talking about so for everyone who's talking about they're okay with the torture and no, we're gonna kill them slow. Think about the same person who you witnessed be abused at one point in time, and 10 years later, oh yeah, we about to slow roast you too now. Because hey, if you didn't get the help you needed and you turn around and be a predator as well, we're gonna do the same thing to you. How do y'all feel? Are y'all okay with that? Because you got to be okay with that if you're okay with because it's easy to say that against this terrible monster of a human being, grown person, when we don't know about their story or their upbringing or their background. But it hits a little bit different when it was someone you know, and you know their background and you know what they went through. And part of the reason, as bad as it is, you have a different understanding why they're doing that. Are we still okay with that?
The person who did this had been abused. That came out in trial, and they never dealt with it. And you know, I personally still feel like life would have been better for the child had we been allowed to do what we wanted to do. There would have been no more having to worry about it. There would have been no more concerns in the future about this person suddenly reappearing, about running across them, about once they came off the 10-year registry, they only had to register for 10 years. So now all of a sudden this 9-year-old is 19. Actually, it took longer for trial and everything. So over 20 and, you know, off at college by herself. And now we have to worry that there's going to be a reconnect, that there's going to be on top of that anger and animosity towards having spent that time in jail for what he freaking did. You know, it's mental illness. And so I think a lot of these things come back to our society does not fund, nor does it properly treat mental illness. We see this all over the city of Austin. We see this all over New Orleans since Katrina hasn't had any kind of mental health. This is the common ongoing thread. We have a sick society and not seeking wellness, not funding wellness. We fund incarceration. We fund the new form of slavery instead. And so instead of putting things into killing them, torturing them, housing them for extended amounts of time, that shouldn't, he was given choices as to whether he wanted to participate in any kind of healing and training, and he could go and take classes. He could have bettered himself in the 5 years he was in prison. He didn't. He did nothing. He didn't join any of the, he wasn't forced to take any sort of healing, any counseling, any of those things. So
and that goes back to what I was talking about, a
society failing all of us.
We can't trust a system like that to do right. Now we 7 minutes past. We are going to jump along now. Now let me say this really quick. I don't have a problem with exile. We got plenty of little islands that we own. If you're concerned about people, you go to the island. You and the rest of those, y'all can figure out your whatever issues you got yourself, but you will not be in the vicinity of any child ever again.
Q's trying to populate a whole new Australia.
Exile's not a bad idea.
Yeah, they're gonna kill each other off anyway.
See, say, hey, yeah, we'll give you a chance, but
the end result is death, though.
Right,
that's everybody.
It's just it's a highlight on the disservice, you know, that mental health attention gets here, and the social services community fails greatly in the first CPS call that they get called out to a house where a child, there's some questionable shit. Like, you know, there's a lot of fails in the system. Absolutely. So to your point, Q, no, I would hate to see the same kid reoffend and get the same treatment, but there have to be things put in place between then and now that hopefully prevent, correct, and you know, provide support so that those cycles don't continue. But I appreciate that perspective. I thought I was solid, and now I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, something. Okay, so now on our clock, we officially at 30 now.
Okay, I
Okay,
got
so let's go.
you. Thank y'all for that.
Yeah, that was good. What we doing next, Nikki?
Is there any benefit to a woman getting married? And so there was a post that I shared on the Facebook page maybe late last week, and it was a picture. I think it was a picture of Rihanna, and she was reading something or whatever, and it just basically had a caption that said something like, "Is there any benefit for a woman to get married?" And I'd hoped that like more married women actually replied on the page. There's 680 something people on there. I'd hope that more married women actually gave their 2 cents. Not to say that unmarried women are feedback was less relevant, but it'd be valid to hear that from a married woman, what her perspective is, what her benefit is to that position. There was a lot of conversation though. There was a lot of chatter. So definitely check that out on the page if you haven't seen it yet. But is there any benefit to a woman getting married? Jules, we start with you first because you are a woman, and I know the men have definitely their feelings about this, their thoughts about this. So since I talk all the time, you go first, and then we'll go from there. Do you think there's any benefit to us in 2023 to legally get married?
As a formerly married woman, I still have some lovely wedding gifts. I had a great like Cuisinart and a mixer and KitchenAid and all the fun stuff. Honestly, there are when it ends, no, it's not a whole lot of benefit anymore. But in marriage, yeah, there's legal protections that if you're with somebody and you don't have that government contract portion of it, you don't have that protection. And so knowing that if something happens to you or your spouse, that the other one is protected legally, that the property is going to go to them, that there's not going to be infighting, that there, especially when you start getting older and people have kids and stepkids. And, I just saw a video about a woman saying, 6 years in, if we're not married, I'm leaving. And it's their 6th anniversary coming up and she's leaving because she's like, how are you going to tell your grandchildren that a man should be doing this, that, or the other for you? Meanwhile, you laid up with me. And if something happened to him, they've been living in this house all this time, and she did title work for land titles. And she knows as soon as something happens to him, she has no protection. And even if it were in his will, because they're not legally married, she could be out on her ass. The kids can come in and say, no, it's our house. They could contest the will and might win. So she could have nothing protecting her in the event of his death. And I mean, two of y'all know me. I'm like as monogamous as it gets. I'm as loyal and faithful as it gets. And so to me, that knowing that your person, like that, having that, taking that step and having that additional layer to that bond, it meant a lot. And it really quieted a lot of things inside of me. And I thought everything was freaking amazing being married. Like I really, there were a lot of benefits spiritually to me. There were a lot of, as far as financially, I mean, the protection is there legally, financially, but not, I mean, living with somebody, if you're splitting bills and you're contributing and still doing those things, mixing finances together, then that's whatever. I mean, it's just the protection if something happens, where either that union ends or by death or otherwise, that there's some protection there. Because once you start mingling stuff, if you're not married, then all of that, there's no protection. The only reason why I didn't lose my house and everything else was because I had proof that my ex-husband cheated. Otherwise, Texas is a 50-50 state, and I would have lost everything that I have worked so hard for. So yeah, there's definitely value in it to me, but that comes from more of a psychological safety and a spiritual safety aspect too. Your husband covers you and should cover you in a way that somebody who's not your husband isn't going to.
Fellas, what are your thoughts?
I'll let somebody else go first.
I'll let the brother get it off.
I mean, what's a woman asking? What's a woman going to benefit from marriage? I mean, why does it have to sound like a business arrangement? Because from what there's a difference between getting married and having a good marriage. You can get married and not have a good marriage. You know,
Mm.
being married shouldn't be a business arrangement. You shouldn't be looking to come up. You know, if something happens, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You should go ahead and be fine with that. And you can actually do that if you sit down with the other party. You want to do things legally, get an attorney, draw everything up. Anything that you want to do legally in this country, you can have drawn up privately. You don't have to go and have a ceremony in front of everybody and go to the courthouse and get a marriage license to say that you're married. Guess what? They didn't do that. They didn't do it overseas in Africa. You know, there are so many societies that don't have marriage licenses, but they recognize marriage because the marriage is a union. It's the union between the two people. And if you're worried about anything other than the union between the two people, you're getting into it for the wrong reason. If you're looking at it as a come up, hey, cover yourself. You know, you can get your own life insurance. You get your own health insurance. Because if you're single, you'd have to do that anyway. If you get with somebody, you should have that. And then sit down and discuss what you're going to do together. Other than that, what are you going into it for?
I guess the contractual part of the marriage for me is literally the problem that I have. The signing, the contract, the binding, the business aspect, how much the government gets, because now we've decided to literally sign on this piece of paper. It doesn't change how much I love you. It doesn't change how much I want to be faithful, how much I want to take care of you. It doesn't change anything that happened the day before for me. We signed on this piece of paper that now, if we decide this does not work between us for one reason or another, it's going to cost an arm and a leg and attorneys and a shit show of pain and money to walk away from something. And where I absolutely 100% understand the spiritual love of the ceremony of marriage, the actual fucking legal commitment. You are bound to me, and I'm bound to you. Like, I totally get the significance and symbolism of that. And I think that's about the only part about getting married to somebody that I might look forward to. But I'm also 100% content being somebody's partner for the rest of their life. And I guess because I've done that already, like maybe because I haven't actually signed the paper, my perspective is, you know, not as valid because I've never been a legal wife of somebody on paper. But, you know, my ex and I were together for 16 years and never not lived a day unlike married people. I was his power of attorney. He was mine. I had just as much legal permission to sign his name and make his decisions and authorize his medical care. I'm still his power of attorney. You know, when we separated, granted, we didn't have any property, so there was nothing to divide, but I literally just changed the locks on the door. And I know, you know, I've been joking about that for 7 goddamn years, Jules. I just changed the locks on the door. I didn't have to go change my name. I didn't have to pay the Social Security people and the driver's license people and my bank cards and my this and my that. And it's crazy to me that that costs money for people to have to go do. And those are such emotional experiences that people get stuck up in. I have to fucking change my name. I have to take my name back as if your last name was something bad to begin with. So I get the love of what marriage symbolizes, but I also understand in 2023, I can have that without the contractual obligation, because other than, I really don't know what else a woman wouldn't or couldn't be entitled to by being his legal power of attorney and heir and in the will. But like you said, it can be contested, and sometimes those things do win. So I do know that there is that margin of error, absolutely, and different states do shit different ways. But if he puts it on paper and it's signed, that's damn near as good as the contractual state allowing you to have 50-50 and blah blah blah, next of kin and shit like that, right? So I don't feel like there's really a benefit to getting married. That doesn't mean I discourage anybody from getting married or don't believe in the sanctity of marriage. I want all that. I just don't know if I want to sign the dotted line. I used to want to, but today, and maybe I'm a little jilted still, but today we can have all of that without the contract. So I'm kind of with you on that, Six. Like and it's not I don't feel like it's a bad thing. I don't think if a man presented that to a woman or a woman presented that to a man, that it means I love you or I'm any less about you by saying, you know, hell, I can even go down there and change my last name to yours if I want to. That's going to cost me money too. But I mean, you know, I could do it.
To me, that's saying I trust you more. That's saying I trust and value you more than you know, saying let's go sign a contract. Because if I trust you and I'm believing with you on at face value. Why do I need somebody else? I don't need a court of law. Like you said, things don't work out. Hey, do what you gotta do. I do what I gotta do. We good.
But
Because we
once you start talking about, you have properties, you have investment properties, you have future investments, you have stocks and bonds together. Once you start getting into where you have significant financial investments, you have joint checking accounts, multiples of them. I mean, at one point I had 7 bank accounts and he was on 4 of them. Like, when you start looking at those type of things, I mean, he could have cleaned it all out.
Right.
I could have cleaned it all out.
Right.
At the end of it, if both of our names are on the title to the property, we still are required to work together to sell it. The fact that we're married, now a judge gets to come in and say, we're doing a division of property and this is how that's going to go. Because without that, you still have to go to court. You still have to fight to get them to sell it or buy you out or do the whatever when y'all split up. Just because you don't have that legal contract of marriage between you does not negate all the legal mix that happens. And you sure as the hell don't want to be investing your finances with somebody if your name's not on it.
But could that possibly be better, Jules? I mean, maybe not, but maybe if it forces both of you to continue to be adults. Because from my experience, boy, I tell you, once we decide that this paper ain't worth nothing no more, then those people who you thought were adults just turn into little babies and kids. And it's like, how did y'all survive all of this time? And now you can't agree on anything, not even agreeing how to properly split and you know, sell properties. And like, you know, if you took this amount of time to build this up, then take the proper amount of time to dissolve those things and come to some mutual agreement. I think it just seems like, I can't even say it, just seems like a lot
married, of the first home that I owned, I was 25. When I bought it, it was in my name because my ex's credit wasn't straight and we weren't married because I wouldn't marry him because his credit wasn't straight. That house belonged 100% to me. It was a duplex. It was an investment property in New Orleans. We got married while living there. It became part his, but it wasn't originally. And so even though we were living together and financially had put in on it, if we had split up without divorcing, he'd have lost everything he invested in it. He'd have had to walk away. There would have been no contract to say, you have to buy me out in this. You have to reimburse me for anything. There would have been no way to prove that there was any arrangement. So without going through attorneys already to begin with from the jump, there is no way. The other thing is, you know, by the time we got divorced, we had an agreement that we would invest heavily in his 401k and future. And that was going to be our retirement. So by the time we divorced, we had to come to an agreement. And I was an adult, but a lot of people aren't, especially not when you're,
let me ask you a question,
they may be
Jules.
younger. They may also be just, you know, burned. I mean, you know, that ain't no such thing as a woman scorn thing. And the same goes for men. If they were done dirty enough, unfortunately, you've got to come back to an emotional equilibrium.
Let me ask you, if the system didn't exist the way that it did, so there was no judge to go, judges don't or didn't deal with divorce proceedings and they didn't decide how to divvy up property and land and money, is how would it then happen and what would that look like?
To me then, I mean, and having done the big wedding thing, that's one of the biggest mistakes I ever made, was wanting the dream wedding and doing that, because it put us in debt. I would never go through that part of it again. Does it have to be the contractual part of it to me? No. If there's that promise inside of both of us and we make that to each other, that this is what we're doing and that bond is there, then that's, I mean, it's not married on paper, but if the bond and the trust is there and it's the agreement and it's a marriage in the heart, then that's the same thing to me. It can be
what I'm saying
go out
is,
into a field and exchange our words or whatever.
So what I'm saying is, if the things that we so heavily rely on when it comes to the legal system getting involved and judges jumping in and having to decide for us because we can't come to an agreement, if those systems did not exist, how would we come to an agreement? What the thrust of what I'm getting at is, I don't think we work to come to an agreement even in civil breakups because we're not forced to. I think if those crutches were not in place, you would see a different, because you would find a way, because hey, if we can't sell this property, then it doesn't benefit either one of us. But we got to come to an agreement some type of way to where if our relationship is over, then how do we make this benefit for us, for our children? I think we just we throw our hands up and say, well, the courts, we let the courts deal with it. And from a relational standpoint, I think it leaves oftentimes both parties broken and incomplete, immature, not really learning from what they could learn from, because they just threw their hands up and walked their separate ways.
So
I mean, you have these broken people that try to jump back into relationships later, not understanding that conflict resolution, even either in the relationship or conflict resolution as you exit a relationship, are equally important. And it's lessons that we don't learn when it comes to that. Go ahead, jump in.
So I mean, I can only speak from the experience that I went through, right? From my lens. And so once I found out what was going on and the confrontation happened, my attorney said I could change the locks. So Nikki, I did the same thing. I changed the locks. He left the house and thought he was coming back, thought he'd be able to convince me that what was going on wasn't. That didn't happen. He was served with the divorce papers, and I tried before we tried. He agreed to sit down and have dinner and try and talk everything through and come to an equitable solution that would be okay for both of us. And because I owned a duplex here in Round Rock, but when I moved here, we were married, so it was in both of our names. His solution was that I should move in on the other half with my sister and my two nieces, and he could stay living in the side we were on. So he wanted the whole half of the duplex to himself so that he could move his mistress in, and I could move into a 3-bedroom with my sister and my two nieces and have 4 of us in a 3-bedroom on the other side. So I don't know what having someone work with you who is mature and logical and reasonable looks like, because he certainly wasn't. I know that when it came to all of his stuff was still in the house, I went through and inventoried everything and packed it neatly. And I had help from family and friends, and they told me that I should be keeping things and destroying things and doing all kinds of stuff. And that's not me. So I didn't. I had an entire garage from the kitchen door to the front door out to the driveway that was filled top to bottom with boxes. Told him to get himself a U-Haul and get his ass over there and get his shit out my house. I gave him back everything that I had ever bought him, everything that was his. I did it as fairly as I could. But because of his inability to negotiate and be reasonable, and I'm sorry, but make me move in to the other half of a duplex so that he can live there with his mistress on the side where we had moved into,
Right.
It was insanity.
Right.
And I don't know what it would be like if I had a person to deal with who was able to be as level-headed, as business-minded as I was raised to be, because at that point, the anger was there, all of the hurt, all of those things were there. But at the end of the day, my moral compass led me to try to be just and fair about everything.
Hey, I want to get in, say a few things before our time is up on this topic. Can you repeat the question for me, Q?
Nikki, repeat.
Can you
question,
restate the question?
I won't.
What
Or
is,
Nikki,
is there benefit for a woman to get married?
Okay. So I would have to say no on the basis of this.
Hold on. Is it or
Now,
what is?
Did you hear me?
Is there a benefit for a woman to get married?
In today's time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would have to say no, because statistically speaking, and the numbers may have changed, but the average duration of a marriage is 3 to 5 years. And the way that we go about in this culture, as far as how to approach a marriage, is, excuse my expression, ass backwards. A lot of people jump into the marriage without going through the process, as far as starting off getting to know that person, basically friends, and then, you know, through that process of being friends or having a friendship, you'll be able to see if that person is ideal for you or not. And also, if it comes to the point of, you know, you're getting married, or, you know, or a woman getting married in this case, there should be terms of, you know, a marital contract, as far as like if the woman agrees with it or not. Because what most people probably don't understand, or most women probably don't understand, that if there's a proposal, you don't necessarily have to say yes. You can reject the proposal. I've seen people do that today. But if you don't agree with the terms of the marriage contract or whatever, or if you don't feel that that person is the right fit, it's better to cut it off at the beginning point, as opposed to jumping into it and then finding out later and then decide that you want out. So I think, like, you know, as far if some, you know, if a woman wants to get involved in, or a man in this case, in the marriage, there needs to be a process. And to your question, Q, you asked something about if there wasn't any judges or anything like that, how would a marriage look like if that was the case? Well, back in the day, and I'm talking about back in the day, like biblical times, or in the ancient Near East culture, before the two involving parties get married, there is a discussion between the both of the houses, basically both of the fathers, to determine, you know, if the two are compatible, if the son is qualified enough to take care of the daughter the way the father did. You know, this is a whole process, and we in this culture just we overshoot it and we jump head first into it, and, you know, and more times than not is why, you know, marriages in this country fail more times than not, because of the way we approach it. I'll yield with that.
I required that we have a year of couples counseling prior to marriage, and we had already been together for 4 years before he proposed. We did all of those things, getting to know each other. We had been friends for 2 years before we started dating. Another 4 years in, he proposed. A year after that, he gave me the ring, and I said, absolutely. But your credit did you get your credit straight yet? Because when you asked me last year, I told you that had to be done. Well, I'm still working on it. Cool. Next requirement. We have to go to couples counseling, because I want to make sure that if anything comes up, we will be able to overcome that. We will communicate well. We can work together, and we'll get through this. And at the end of the day, that didn't stop him from cheating. And that is a deal breaker to me. The other thing, to your point about back in the day, that's not the society we live in anymore. We don't live in one single earner households anymore. We don't have, it's not the commonality for one person to be able to support and sustain a household financially. Women weren't allowed to own property back then. So you have women who have careers and have options now, who aren't going to stay in a relationship with a man who's abusive or incorrect or cheating on them.
Hey, I was gonna say, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
And should a woman still get married? I would say yes, but I will also say to, I think, statistic.
Well, you should check the question. Is that the actual question? I thought it was not should they. I thought, like, what are the benefits of a woman
Is
getting
there a
married?
benefit in general? Hold on, let me go double check.
I think there's.
I mean, it's two different questions. If or what is that's two different questions.
Whatever.
Hold on, we're going back to
Okay.
it. But go ahead, Ivory.
I think
What are the benefits of marriage for a woman? So what's the benefit?
I think they should get married. I think there are a lot of benefits to getting married. But I was going to talk about the statistics about how long marriages stay together. And a big part of who actually stays married has a lot to do with finances and class as well. As people go up in class, they tend to stay married longer. So sounds kind of bad, but if you are poor, lower class, it's harder to stay married. I mean, it just is. Those type of financial struggles, along with normally if you're poor or lower class, that's a family kind of issue that's generational as well. So you're not looking at the same type of family support for your marriage. All kind of factors that go actually into class and how long people stay married. But if you have a good foundation, I would say, with you have good support from your family, this person has good support from their family, that you're going to feel that family pressure to actually stay married on both sides, which actually makes people sometimes stay married longer than they normally would, because so much respect for my family and this is what they expect, so much respect for this person's family and this is what they expect. Then once you decide to actually stay in there, no matter what, thick or thin, it is a better financial situation for your children. As a woman, and I don't care how much money you make as a woman, 2 incomes are always better than 1. I mean, it just is.
See, that doesn't sound like a benefit to me. only in the aspect, I mean, yes, of course, two incomes is absolutely better than 1 and certainly can provide better for your children, no doubt. But to stay with somebody for to stay with somebody for reasons other than love is not a benefit to me. That's a detriment to my mental health and my spirit. And the kids are going to eventually pick up on that energy that my mama don't love my daddy the way that she used to, and my daddy don't love my mama the way that he used to. But the families are so heavily invested, and class is invested, and all these things are now invested in, because being married doesn't guarantee you a good man or a good woman. Being married doesn't guarantee you a solid marriage.
It depends on how you view.
But that goes against original marriage. Wasn't set up to just love.
For love, like I mean,
that ain't how marriage worked. Even like so. I mean, I guess
world don't see marriage that way. They see marriage as a way for 2 people to come together and build a family together and build legacy. And love is nice. It's in there. It comes, it goes, but it's not the primary purpose of marriage. The primary purpose is to have an incubator to raise children and build a legacy with those children. So I don't see marriage the way you see it. So that's probably why it works. Those ways work better for me.
Yeah, because what if there's no children
historically
involved?
That's why marriages work. It appears that marriage were more successful at different stages because they didn't view it the way that we view it now.
Well, that'd be definition of success is open to, interpretation, because success for me is love. Raising my children in a home that is peaceful and built around love and built around righteousness and built around the spirit of, the things that I think revolve around what love is far more important and beneficial, in my opinion, than the business aspects to the combining of 2 people and this, that, and the third. When that's why I have a problem with arranged marriages.
So are you a Tamara Mowry person then? It was successful because we learned our life experiences, and I can say I had a great marriage, but it was still a failure because we said till death do we part, and we both still alive and we ain't married no more. So it was that marriage failed.
Speaking of
no
that,
matter how good the marriage was, no matter how much I love my kids, the marriage itself failed. Right. I'll never look at it any different like that, despite of the good things that came out of it.
Right.
Speaking of the vow to death do you part, I don't think we understand what that actually means. We just say it just to say it, because once it gets ugly, or the weather's getting rough and the tiny ship is tossed, we ready to throw in the towel and call it quits, and we immediately, and I'm speaking in general terms, forget the vows. I'll love you for better and for worse, to death do us part. And it's like, basically you said a vow, then you broke it. So in your case, Q, that would be fail, because you said your vow in front of witnesses, and when you say you're supposed to mean it, but then when you guys come to a disagreement or a fight or whatever, and then all of a sudden you can't, for whatever reason you can't take it anymore, all of a sudden that stuff goes out the window real fast. So that's why I say people should really think about the marriage before they get into it, because it's not just the glitz and glamours of being married for a few hours. It's more so, are you willing to grow with this person, deal with their what you like about them, what you don't like about them? Can you tolerate the type of person that they are, or whatever the case may be, things like that.
All their seasons.
Yeah, until they break one of them other commandments. I was willing to ride everything out until they broke one of them other commandments about not committing adultery.
That one.
Yeah,
Well, of course, if that is committed, that's basically the icing on the cake, as far as like, okay, you did that. You could basically you violated the terms of your contract, and you're not supposed to do that. So yeah, you gotta separate at that point.
Yeah, because everything else that we went through up until then, and that's when you ask what are the benefits, that knowing that the level of commitment was so strong between us that he asked me to take his last name, that he wanted to form that union and bond with me. And no, it didn't have to be the piece of paper and the legal contract part of it or whatever, but there was something spiritual and healing and cathartic and safe to me as a woman being a wife. And that's why, at some point in my future, I hope I have the opportunity to be married again and to never have to deal with that ending. I want that to be a forever thing,
So being married and getting divorced doesn't scare you away from getting married again?
Not to the right person.
That's good, because a lot of people after they get divorced are like, never again. Q, would you get married again? Will you get married again?
Yes.
Yeah. So it doesn't scare you off.
No.
Yeah, and I sometimes feel a little bit sad when people say, I will never get married again.
The value of that piece of paper is not the same to me anymore, but the commitment of marriage from just from a spoken word and a promise and a commitment to between us and God, that still means something to me. Now, again, would so for the sake of just because it doesn't mean anything to me, if it still means something to that other person who I feel means the world to me, then it can't be a deal breaker for me. Be like, oh, I don't believe in it. It may not mean, the paper itself may not mean what it means to you, but the commitment to this person does mean as much to me. And I've just gotten to the place to where my word should be more of a commitment than anything. But if you need the piece of paper, then so be it.
Yeah, but actions are louder than words, and so and honestly, again, if a man is in my life and is fulfilling that role holistically, where I know that he is my safe space, then the idea of marriage is kind of a give or take now for me. I don't think it would be something I would ever, if somebody I was with didn't want it, I don't think I would ever pressure them for it. But it's something that if it was something we both wanted, I'd be willing to do it again. But the idea that there has to be there's just a certain level of different, I don't know. There was just something very different once we said those vows. It was not the piece of paper signing. It wasn't so much the last name changing. It was standing in front of everyone and saying those vows to each other in front of our family, friends, a pastor, and God. Like it was the act of, and it wasn't the wedding. It was the promise that we made, and it was the dream of the building of the marriage that was the important piece. And so without having a level of commitment, then at that point, what are we doing? Like what are we building together if we don't even agree on the level of commitment we have with each other? How can we build together if we can't even agree on that?
Nikki, you see what I see. I think that's a good question. Is the marriage after a failed marriage more important? I say yes, absolutely. Because the first time it could be, it was their fault. I was young. We didn't understand everything. Had to live and learn. Now the second one, if you mess up the second one, then that's on you. That means something wrong with you, and you got some, whatever it is, you didn't fix what was wrong with you. Then that second one, if that second one mess up, then it's on you.
And it's not
regardless of, even if you still have a flaw in picking the right person,
right?
It's still on you.
I was going to say, sometimes it's not even always that it's on you and the fact that it's something wrong with you, but second marriages do have a higher divorce rate than first marriages. And I think it's that same reason, like, people don't go into a second marriage the way they went into a first marriage. Most people are not willing to put up with the same amount of friction in a second marriage as a first marriage, because in their minds, I did that and it still didn't work. So the second one comes, things are going wrong, and their mind says, I will never do that long again. And so normally people jump out of second marriages faster.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like I wasted first marriage.
You think that's because they jumped into the second one too damn fast? Like the healing space just was not there?
Breaks in your brain, and you just got to really make sure.
And people don't acknowledge a lot of the triggers that they have.
True. Or the traumas, or the traumas
triggers
that
you even developed in the first. So now you the hint or the sign of something that reminds you of a trauma that you had in your first, you're not giving that same level of grace. You're not trying to give that same type of communication to figure out what's going on. You just like, oh, hell no, I've seen this before. And it's like, that's not you. Anytime you're dragging past things into a new relationship, then it's a good chance that you weren't ready to jump back into a new relationship.
And to Ivory's point about having the support of your family, I think as young as I was when we met and got together, I didn't realize how important that was. And we both had the support of both of our families. We had intertwined. We had been together as friends and then as, together for years. But both of his parents were on their third marriages. So I guess that should have been a little bit larger red flag to me, that he came from such a broken place that both parents were on their third marriages.
They kept trying. They was trying to find it. Yeah, you ain't gonna get so many spins out of me.
Demetrius went biblical. I mean, people don't want to hear about Jose. Don't nobody. That's the book in the Bible. Don't nobody talk about Jose.
Jose.
Yeah, all right, we just
the promiscuous woman.
Uh-huh.
That was a direct word from the Lord. That's not a word for everyone.
that get talked about like Obadiah.
Because it don't need to talk about it. Because if God ain't told you to go marry the harlot, then you shouldn't be marrying her.
That is true.
It's interesting to hear you say that second marriages have higher divorce rates, and I can absolutely see why. I feel like for me, it's been going on 7 years since I've been in a serious committed relationship. I'll drag this healing journey out as long as I need to, because I'm not doing this again.
But
and if
Nikki,
I never do it again, I'm okay with that. But I will not go back into the lion's den. What I know today, I didn't know then. And so to the question
is broken also, though, Nikki, don't you agree?
Do what?
The facade is broken. Well, like anybody who's officially got married, in your mind, this was your forever.
Supposed to be, right?
But it's supposed to be, but in your mind, you actually thought forever at the time. Mm-hmm. Or if you didn't think it was forever, then you wouldn't enter into a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But then once
never said yes,
something that you were convinced that it was going to be forever and it wasn't, that facade has been broken. So even when you go back into it the next time, you don't go in with the same mindset, like,
right? It's an exit plan out
question
here.
That this is going to be forever. Like, it did. I said that last time, it wasn't it.
And I don't want to start a relationship or be in a relationship where I have an exit plan. I didn't have an exit plan because there wasn't one. But then after time and time again showed me that an exit plan is probably what I need to start, formulating for myself. If I do want the happiness that I want, or I do want the love and peace that I want, I would rather have nobody in my life intimately than have the wrong person in my life. And so for me, I think that the question of Exactly. You know, my friends, we were at lunch this last weekend, and they always give me shit for my perspective on men and how quickly I decide I'm not interested in somebody. And, you know, they're like, oh, well, you need to just get to know them more. No, I don't. If the energy is not there, I'm not going to waste time, because I don't need to do this to breathe. I know what I want, and I know what I don't want, and I know where my room of flexibility is, and I know that I didn't do it right, and I didn't have it right the first time. What I look forward to in leaving that relationship was that if I'm going to be fortunate and blessed enough to have my forever after, I get to kind of have my hand in building that, and I get to pick and choose what I get to a la carte my shit, what I do and what I don't like, you know, obviously within reason of compromise, which is expected when two people come together. But I feel like the next one, because there's only going to be one more. I'm not interested in doing this over and over and over. A third marriage, fucking take me out and shoot me. No, I'm good. And if I never get married, or if I never find my happily ever after, today I'm okay with that. If that wasn't what was in the cards for me, then I need to figure out what my journey and path in this world is supposed to be. But it has to be based on love, and it has to be based on reciprocal respect and trust. And I feel like a lot of people don't have that right now because of their own injuries. That it's just safe for me to coast and wait, because there is no second one is going to be a higher divorce rate than a first one. Like, no, this shit's going to be for real. And maybe and maybe that's just because that's my perspective, you know, on how I feel that union is supposed to look, or what it's supposed to consist of.
Nikki, I
2
respect
minutes,
and encourage
we
you.
got to move to the last one.
Yeah, I'm gonna be brief. You took a long time to get to the next topic, but I respect and admire.
I went along with you to go that extra 5
I
minutes on the first one.
Well, you started late. I respect and admire your approach, because I see a lot of women doing that, as far as slowing it down a bit and taking their time. And, you know, being where I am now, as far as being older, I can admire and respect you taking that approach, because you don't want to repeat history.
No.
And I don't blame you for that one, because I think a lot of women are going that route, as far as, like, you know, what they want and what they don't want, and in that regard. To Ivory's, what she said earlier, I do remember reading that. That's why I brought up the marriage statistic being 3 to 5 years, because when you get married a second time, the rate, the statistic goes up, it's higher, and when it keeps going up and up and up. But it goes back to the what I said earlier in regards to taking your time, like what you're doing the second time around, Nikki, and I'm pretty sure other women are doing that as well, to make sure that when you get involved, or if you get involved in the next relationship, it will be the right fit, and, you know, you guys can, you know, ride it out together, you know, in that sense.
Mm-hmm. And that does not mean, because there was some conversation on the Facebook from men who were like, women don't know what they want. These modern women don't know what a wife is. Woo, woo, woo. I get it. And I agree that there are some women who are out there like that too. But I think that for women who believe in love and lead in love, who want marriage, it's not that a woman doesn't know her role, or a woman just wants the man to pay all the bills, or she's going to love you any less, or use you. Yes, those people exist, but I don't think that that's the majority of us. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but I can not be married to you and still love you just like a wife would love you. And
really quick, I see a lot of women doing self-care, self-wellness, and self-healing. So when women are going through that process, their standards is going to be a bit different. So if a man is going to approach them, they better come correct, because she's basically going to turn that down. She's not with the jive. So, but I'm just going based off what I'm seeing and experience, as far as
misleading.
This is what they're going through, as far as, like, them healing from. Hold on, let me finish. Hold on. From them, basically hitting the reset button based on, past relationship, whatnot. And, for the men as well. But, this is just what I'm seeing on the forefront in regards to, based on the question that Nikki presented.
Maurice, thank you.
Stop all of the self-healing.
Stop
It's
the
not
self-healing?
beneficial. Yes.
It's not beneficial.
Correct.
What?
Stop.
You would say that. You have to expand on that.
The mode and the mindset of self-healing is off balance. You do self-healing only up to the point of things. See, when it comes to all this relationship stuff, you can self-heal all you want to. You still gonna have to deal with other people. You still gonna have to deal with another person. So if you don't practice dealing with a partner, dealing with relationships, working on relationships with siblings, with your parents, with your children, you have to have relational conflict resolution as a part of your daily practice. If all you're doing is just that self-healing stuff, you're not helping yourself. You're gonna help yourself stay alone. And then, love yourself while you're alone. But eventually, when you get with another person, you're going to need some conflict resolution, listening skills. Like a lot of that stuff, that self-healing ain't you not practicing while you doing all that self-healing.
What makes you think a person is not incorporating all those intangibles into their self-healing process?
Look at the results. Look at your thread and you tell you. Look at the thread and you tell me.
Oh, you say look at the thread? I can't look at the thread, but the question is there. The question is there as far as them.
Go on your Facebook thread and you tell me if that's what you see.
Let me see.
Yeah, I know they all say the same stuff.
I'm not going to advocate for stopping self-healing, but at a certain point,
I said that to grab your attention, but I mean, it comes, you better make sure that it's in balance. As much as you're self-healing, you working on communicating with other people as well.
Exactly. It has to be for no purpose other than to sharpen. You have to be sharpening your own tools in that self-healing so that you are a more prepared partner for whoever that person may be.
I said it initially for shock value, but
you shocked me.
A lot of the self-help or the motivational messaging that I'm hearing now on social media and places is a lot about like protecting my peace. I'm protecting my energy. I'm keeping.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
No, but
it don't work.
That is so unrealistic, and it is so out of line of what it really takes to be fully engaged in relationship with other people.
Yes.
Like I can, to a certain level, protect peace, but the nature of relationships is going to be friction at times. The nature of relationships is I'm not going to be at peace all the time. The nature of relationships is I'm going to be out of my comfort zone. So those messaging, that doesn't really help people to me.
And peace and equality, peace is not equal to solitude. So if I get myself alone in a quiet space, then I'm gonna be at peace. That's not peace.
Such peace, and you don't have to deal with all of the toxic people of the world, and all of your energy can always be sunshine and happiness. I'm just saying, it doesn't gel with what it really looks like to live and rub against other people, and I don't like that messaging.
See, she agrees.
No, to me, it's more about learning to not only set appropriate boundaries to protect my peace, but learning how to have the strength to uphold those boundaries. And more importantly, learning how to discern when I am with a partner who respects that and is doing the same for themselves so that we can communicate and work together to actually build and compromise and reciprocate.
Yeah, you mentioned the key word there, boundaries. Those boundaries are important, and those boundaries need to be set up front so a person can acknowledge it. If they don't respect it, then there's no point of you letting them into your space, so to speak.
Boundaries are made to be stepped on, so you can renegotiate them constantly in relationships. Another
that is my respect.
Bothers me about people. I know, and I'm such a big person on boundaries. I think boundaries are so important. Not only is it important to have boundaries, but you have to learn as a person how to enforce your boundaries. You also have to learn as a person that your boundaries, even people you love, that you want in your space, that deserve to be in your space, are going to constantly step on your boundaries.
If they didn't, you wouldn't need boundaries.
And it's up to you. And it's up to you to keep that composure to uphold those boundaries and not change them if you stand at 10 toes down on them.
Okay. So we are officially
Go ahead.
got 10 minutes left. So we're going to touch this last one like we said we were, and we are doing a hard close. What's the last one we got, Nikki?
Just so what you're offended. What's wrong with being offended? So Jules actually posted this last week after our conversation about how fluid is too fluid. And I don't know, Ivory and Yohanan, if y'all were able to see last week's conversation, but it was Q and I had a great conversation, in my opinion. I had some great feedback afterwards, and it was about fluidity with age fluid, gender fluid, race fluid, ethnicity fluid, species fluid, the trans everything world, right? And so after this conversation was over, Jules posted just a quick little reel, like 50 something seconds. So we'll play it here in just a second, of what sounds like some comedian who is just giving a quick little blurb about being offended. And I thought it was really freaking good. Q, do you have it up, or do you want me to try to hit play? I can probably do it quickly.
Okay, if you do it before me, then that's fine.
I got it up.
Well, they can be offended. What's wrong with being offended? When did sticks and stones made break my bones stop being relevant? Isn't that what you teach children, for God's sake? That's what you teach toddlers. He called me an idiot. Don't worry about him. He's a dick. Now you have adults going, I was offended, and I have rights. Well, so what? Be offended. Nothing happens. You're an adult. Grow up. Deal with it. I was offended. I don't care. Nothing happens when you're offended. There's nothing. I went to the comedy show, and the comedian said something about the Lord, and I was offended. And when I woke up in the morning, I had leprosy. If you say that and someone gets offended.
So offended.
I'm gonna give you a quick theory. This cancel culture, offended society, it invites you into a victim mentality, even in times where it's not necessary. The longer they can keep you feeling like the victim, it's easier to control victims than it is people who are empowered to maintain their own thoughts and actions and responses. That's my thought. Somebody else can jump in.
And I'll add to that, in addition, that it's also easier to keep us divided. And so therefore, if the fact that something you stated out loud, your opinion offended me, now we can no longer unite. And y'all, how many times in all these years have I said, a house divided is easily ruled? If they can keep us offended by each other, over each other, we'll forget that, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all spirit having a human experience. We are all the same race. We are all, we're all trying to survive this experience of humanity together. And we would come together if they didn't keep us divided and offended and figure out ways to manipulate that offense.
I was going to say that the scariest thing about the culture now is feeling like you can't have some conversations.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like, I don't care about who doesn't agree with me. I really just care that we can have the conversation. And at the point you look up and it's like, you can't even have a conversation.
Yeah.
That is so unfortunate. Like, how do we exercise our own brain muscles if we aren't allowed to keep thinking and sharing and talking? It's like crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Saturday a week ago, I was in New Orleans for a funeral, and the topic of conversation, somebody said something about Microsoft stock being granted. No, as long as they don't sell that, they'll never have a problem because that'll never go down. And I looked and I said, well, yeah, I guess I saw something about Bud Light. I don't know what happened with that. And the conversation was sparked, and I spoke my piece on it. And half the room at the repast, the after funeral party, half the room got up and left. because I shared my opinion very clearly and very openly and very honestly. At which point, one of the women got up and came over and started verbally twisting what I had said, manipulating what I had said, targeting me, waging ad hominem attacks at me, and trying to completely derail what I actually said with what she was putting on me. And I looked at the mother of the deceased and I said, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I know we aren't supposed to talk about abortion, religion, and politics in polite society. I didn't realize that gender is now something I can't have a conversation about. And the woman, my friend's mom, said, no, oh no, we can have this conversation, and looked at the girl and made her leave the room. But it took an elder to stand up and say that, because half the room just got up and walked out, and the one who was so offended is not part of that community, which is always the thing that baffles me. The extreme defensiveness and attack aggressiveness, offensiveness of people who are speaking up on behalf of a group that they're not party to. And they, in my experiences thus far, they tend to be far more aggressive in the attack. The people who are actually marginalized in these groups tend to be much more, they've been through so much crap. They tend to be much more willing to talk and compromise and come to some sort of level of understanding and actually have the conversation to try and comprehend what would it take for me to help you understand my plight so that maybe you wouldn't be against me. Oh, you're not really against me? They're willing to actually a lot of the time have those conversations. Whereas people that jump on the bandwagons aren't, in my experience.
Yeah, I agree. Them bandwagon, I ain't got no time for those bandwagon.
For other people, like how, like, and I do understand that to a large extent, because there are things that I have stood up for other people on. But the level that they're willing to take it to, and when it's a verbal, I mean, this, we're not talking about, again, so what, you're offended. You didn't wake up with leprosy because the words you didn't like. And the inability for me to have an opinion. The idea that my voice now has become silent because someone else's voice has become so much more important is a very dangerous place to be.
So dangerous. I can't begin to tell you how dangerous. Like I said, we're on Free Thinkers is on borrowed time right now. We're gonna be underground.
Somebody gonna kick us off.
We're gonna be underground. We're gonna be back at the coffee shop in no time because it's we're on borrowed time.
I want in on the
I'm
in
so
person,
serious
by
about
the
that
way.
too.
What'd you say, Jules?
I want in on the in person, by the way.
Sometimes I wonder, Q, how we have not gotten in trouble, and I don't know if that's maybe we just haven't reached the wrong crowd yet. You know, I don't know. I don't know, because as normal as these conversations are for us to have on here, like, this is who and how I am 24/7, right? This is what I do no matter where I go. Today I was on the phone with my son's assistant principal refusing the STAR test, and so he's like, I just have to, I have to call you and tell you that we have to present the test to him, and I have to let you know that we have to at least present it to him. And I'm like, well, he's not going to be there when you present this to him. And anyways, we ended up having a very good conversation, spoke the same language. Damn, I just lost my train of thought. Shit.
About being who you are 24/7.
Thank you. So that somebody else can follow my brain for me. I'm so thankful for that. He was like, so after we had this long conversation, he was like, I respect your position. He's like, I really wish more parents would, take action like you have. The teachers hate these tests just as much as the students do. Like, it's absolutely an asinine thing to have these standardized testings, right? And he's like, I hope that you use your voice. And I was like, we haven't met yet, but hi, I'm Nikki. I was like, that's definitely what I do. I use my voice. This place that we have here, I feel like is just the norm, but I know it's not. Because every time I get into these conversations with people who are not a part of our freethinker world, I'm offending somebody, or I'm saying something I shouldn't be saying, or I will come across somebody who will be like, oh my God, I can't have this conversation with anybody but you. And that's wild to me. You know, like I told you last week, I'd had a conversation with a friend of mine recently who was having issues at work with the required use of my name is such and such, and I identify as such and such. And this person was like, my name is such and such, and I refuse to identify as such and such. You see me externally as a woman, you can refer to me as my first name. That's okay. You don't have to call me Mr. or Miss. Just call me by the name that I tell you my name is. I externally look like a woman, so if you call me a she, that's okay. If you don't want to call me a she, that's your choice too, but I'm not hiding who I am externally, and this is my name. You can call me that. And for there to be a professional possible consequence or punitive action because a person doesn't participate in my name is so-and-so and I identify as he, she, him, their, whatever the case may be.
Insanity.
And so she was like, I can't have this conversation anywhere else and not feel like I'm being offensive or feel like I'm who they say I am, which would be counterproductive to the mission of inclusion. And I think that is absolute bullshit. And so I think that there are some cases where people are being intentionally exclusive, fine. But this is not that. And so when I saw you post that, I was like, being offended isn't a bad thing. Being offended is not a bad thing, but you need to check at the door what you're being offended about, because hit dogs do holler every time. And are you a part of the problem or are you part of the solution? Being offended is okay. It teaches you how to deal with emotions and feelings and things that are not the same as you. But like y'all said, in this world of cancel culture, it's pretty fucking dangerous. People lose their rights to access to information because of feeling offended. Yes. You know how many words I have to type in secret coding just so that Facebook algorithms don't get offended by a word that I've said?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, my mom just turned 71 last month. And years ago, before everything went to video online because of the life, mom had come in person with me a couple of times when she was in town. And my mom thoroughly enjoyed having a place and in her late 60s to find some place where we could sit and have these open conversations with different strongly held opinions in a respectful environment and learn from each other. And there were things that she saw us and had heard about where we, at the end of it, agree to disagree. But we all come to it with an open mind as far as the respect enough to hear what each other's saying. Like Nikki, the very first topic, you said, I was dead set on this, but now, and that's the value of what we are doing here and have been doing for all these years. That's that value, that ability to have open, respectful communication, not with ad hominem attacks and the verbal abuse and twisting of words. We don't mince words in this group. And if people come in from the outside, they see how respectfully, even when we're extremely passionate, even when we are on polar opposite ends of topics, we will still, at the end of it, we can respectfully agree to disagree. I'm sorry that my opinion don't jive with yours. I'm sorry that, if my thought offended you, but at the end of the day, it's just my thoughts. I'm not actively out there, harming other people. And anytime it comes to those type things, that's where we do tend to kind of align more. But outside of that,
and not only just agreeing to disagree, but actually having an appreciation for the difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I completely disagree, but thank you for that perspective.
Right.
Because you did allow me to view things a way that I didn't. So even it helps me even understand what I feel or what I believe in the proper context. Because some things, if you're so lasered in or focused, or you're missing the big picture in certain areas, then even your own argument is not as valid as it could be if you haven't considered all of the other factors. And talking to someone who disagrees with you helps you in that process.
I was just going to say that is so true. Like, since I've been being here and free thinkers and things, it's not like I've changed anything, I think. But when I go back to, because we all have our own think tanks, right? Like a group of people, we've been around forever and we pretty much think the same thoughts, right? But it helps me
when they say it, you be like, you still do you
So
do
I
you
haven't
fully get the whole angle of why you
even
think
though
that, right?
change my thoughts. Like if I go back into my church circles or my friends circles, even though I'm like, I agree with you, but let me tell you how other people feel.
Right.
Let me tell you the other thoughts people have about this. Yes, we think this way, but I don't want you to think like that's common sense or everybody knows that. Like it gets you out of those kind of that
Narrow-minded
way of
mindsets.
seeing something. It doesn't mean that you have to change how you feel, but to Jules' point, we're all living a human experience, right? So it shows you a grander picture of the human experience of the subject that you're talking about and not just your own narrow way of seeing something. But you don't have to change your mind, but it lends back humanness to everybody with different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
All
And
right.
this group
So
tends not to be an echo chamber. This group tends
Right.
to bring and invite and welcome varied opinions. And even when everybody fundamentally agrees on a lot of the topic, Q will come up with something just to add to this and open that conversation to the wider thought process and break open that echo chamber and go, well, okay, but did y'all consider this? And that's something that is so
And
unique
these
about this group.
free thinkers has allowed me to do that because I
Right.
am a collection of so many different opinions. Even
Yeah.
when we're all agreeing in one way, I can pull from my head and be like, well, I remember back in 2014, somebody also, but what about this? Let's
Mm-hmm.
include that into it. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
I want to share this. I shared this yesterday. It says if you
All
want
right,
to
Nikki, you
support,
gonna close us out?
this will be it. If you want to support people, if you want to support people with their mental health, be willing to believe in things that you cannot see. Be open to the idea that people experience things you know nothing about, and accept that your personal lived experience is not the only lived experience.
Mm-hmm.
So with that,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you guys for giving us your spirit and your time and your brains and your hearts tonight. Those of y'all that watched us, we greatly appreciate you. There was some fantastic conversations in the chat. This was great. I think that making us have to go through this quickly and stopping it, like my brain is, oh my God, I'm going like a million freaking miles right now. Like I'm not gonna be able to calm down for at least another hour when this is over. So this was great. And I appreciate you guys coming tonight. And if everything works the way I hope it does, we'll see you all next Tuesday. Good night, everybody. Ivory, it was good to see you again. Jules, you too. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you so
Good night.
much. Love you.